Welcome to Like-Minded with Dr. Patrice. Each episode, we'll be sitting down with different types of experts and unpacking the intersection of mental health, pop culture, and our day-to-day lives. My name is Dr. Patrice LaCoy. I'm an international psychologist, licensed marriage and family therapist, and former entertainment executive. This episode, we will be discussing mental health challenges for young women, what many can be going through, and what's being done to help. My guest today is Dawn L. Brown, CEO of EmpowHer. As an advocate and strategic thought partner, Dawn has more than 25 years of experience leading BIPOC youth advocacy initiatives that successfully became California legislation and established best practices for eliminating gender bias across many areas. Within the juvenile justice system, decriminalizing sex-trafficked girls, implementing community-based gang intervention strategies, and ending the shackling of pregnant women. Dawn has also served on various advisory boards and think tanks focused on issues affecting women and girls of color. Welcome, Dawn. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
So I want to talk to you a little bit and get to understand about your work with EmpowHer. How does the organization support young women in the community?
Yeah, so EmpowHer Institute, we've been around for 21 years, and we serve girls of color, girls from marginalized communities here in LA County. We serve over 1,000 girls a year. And what we basically do is our goal is to break generational cycles of poverty. And we believe the best way to do that is through college and career readiness. We provide skills-based learning, social emotional learning, and mentoring to our girls. And so and we take a holistic approach. So any obstacle that you can think of that would stop a girl from reaching her fullest potential, we are there to try to challenge and move out the way for her, as well as help her develop the skills so that she knows how to navigate those systems later in life. And so we partner with 13 different schools, middle and high schools. Our girls start with us in the 7th grade, and they work with us through the 12th grade. And we teach a class every week. It's a social emotional learning class. There's women who volunteer and come in as mentors once a month with the girls. And the girls are exploring everything from what it means to be a girl, what it feels like to be a girl of color in the world, a Black and brown girl in the world, and all the traumas that go with that. And so they're learning how to heal through those traumas and to learn to focus on everything from developing those skills around soft skills like communication and hard skills like STEM. Right?
Yes.
And so we're doing all of that with them on a weekly basis. And then with our middle and high school girls. And then in addition to that, we have an awesome summer program. We also have a Saturday program for our girls in the community who don't go to those schools. And then with our summer program, we have a social justice STEAM camp. And we actually are training. It's a 5-week, 2-session camp. And it's a daily camp where they're living on a college campus, they are studying college concepts, and they are being trained as marine biologists.
Wow, that's incredible.
And so, yes, and these are middle schoolers.
Yes.
And so they are out there in the field every day, and they are actually exploring and looking at climate change and its impact on the marine ecology, and then comparing that to the impact and resiliency of marginalized communities. And so they create projects. They even get to pursue their and obtain their scuba diving and sailing certifications. So my youngest certified scuba diver is an 11-year-old Black girl.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
And so they're doing those amazing things. And then they're also, my older girls are actually getting jobs in the summer. So there's a plethora of programs. That's, our main programs, but we have a plethora of other programs that really wrap around our girls, so that any and everything that we can do to make sure that she's able to go to college and beyond, then we want to help her do that. So that's who we are.
That's amazing. I'm interested in finding out a little bit more about the social emotional learning part of it, because I think that there are a lot of organizations that maybe focus on career and education and that kind of thing. How did you know that that was an important element to include in EmpowHer?
Yeah, so actually the history of EmpowHer sort of tells that story. Our founder, Betty Lamar, was a pregnant teen. And so she walked across her high school graduation pregnant. She went on to become a successful exec in the STEM world. But it wasn't before she had to go on, public assistance and do many things in order to survive and take care of her child. So when she decided to start EmpowHer, they actually started focusing on entrepreneurship initially.
Okay.
And they were in the high schools doing entrepreneurship and realized that the kids were struggling. They were really struggling with understanding these concepts and even just focusing because of all the traumas that they were experiencing. And so that set of women, our founders, really sort of took a step back and said, hold up, we got to start with them younger, and we need to start looking at social emotional learning, because we got to help them focus on those traumas and how to heal from them first before we can do anything else. And so when I came into the organization, we already had that core, right, that foundation. And then I took it to the next level, made us a social justice based organization, and added all of these amazing wraparound opportunities for them, everything from case management to our social justice STEAM work. And really our goal is to develop socially conscious girls who can address issues that are most impacting, social justice issues that are most impacting them in their communities, and also be able to compete on a global scale, not just from a skills-based level, but also understand how to manage their money when they get to that place and they can make that money, but also how to navigate workspaces when it comes to microaggressions and mansplaining and things of that sort.
So much,
And so that's where we talk about that social emotional learning, because we want them to also be socially healthy, right, and emotionally healthy, so that all of those levels are addressed, and they can really step into the fullness of who they are.
I think that's so incredible because, what you're recognizing is that you can give people opportunities. They can take those opportunities, and there can still be barriers to them moving ahead, especially if there's trauma that's unresolved, that hasn't been dealt with, or they don't know how to deal with it, right? That's not been modeled for them maybe. Right. And so that can really stop someone in their tracks, even when they have so much potential and so much talent and ability. And so I think that, you really have... You're teaching them how to do this, but they're also teaching them how to be in the world in a different way that's much healthier for them and going to get them so much further. I think that it's really special, because when I was reading about this organization, I was thinking about, it's, of course, you want to give them the education, you want to give them the opportunities, and they still may not be able to get where they need to if you don't take care of the whole child. And so I think it's really beautiful, that work that you're doing. Tell me what you noticed. You said that you primarily serve Black and brown girls. Tell me what you noticed that are other things that they deal with, as far as like the intersectionality of being a girl, being from a marginalized community. You mentioned, people, cycles of poverty and that kind of thing. What are those unique challenges you see with the girls that come to you?
Well, 96% of the girls that we serve live at or below the poverty level, right? And we only partner with Title I schools, which are schools that qualify for free or reduced lunch, with the majority of the kids qualify for free or reduced lunch. So that's who we are, the majority of who we're serving every day. And we know that poverty is bigger than just the economic component of that, right? What comes with that is health, right? Racism, sexism, misogynoir, right? And so we know that those things, depression, we know that there are other things that come along with that. And our girls are sitting in the crux of that. They are sitting in the heart of that, because they are watching their parents struggle. And then they are also experiencing their own struggle. And they carry the weight of that. They also carry the weight of being girls of color in the world. And they know what that feels like. They know, our girls have created film projects where they talked about the racism that they have experienced. Really? And we just tell them, pick any kind of topic you want to talk about. And that's the topic they chose,
because it's on their mind, right? And they're thinking about it all the time.
Because they're thinking about it and they're experiencing it. They're also experiencing significant levels of gender discrimination, right? And sexism in their households, because we're also looking at cultural things, right? So we're looking at Latin families where there's a lot of machismo when it comes to the men, right? And we're looking at Black families where sometimes our girls don't have their fathers in the household, right? And when when they do, you see the difference, right?
Tell me, spend a little bit of time on that. Tell me what differences you see.
You see a difference in their confidence level.
Okay.
You see a difference in their trust levels when it comes to men. You see a difference in how they develop their relationships, right? But it also depends on how healthy that male is in the household.
Yes.
And so many times I hear them say things like, I get teased about my weight. I get teased about the way I look in my household. They're looking at social media, and our girls are where I think body image has always been a thing that young girls have had to experience.
Yes, always.
But what we also know is that studies have shown previously that when we look at self-esteem, Black and brown girls are measured differently, right? Self-esteem actually, it appears based on the scales that were initially designed that they had high self-esteem because the scales in which they were measuring them was different, right? So they were measuring them based on these white scales, right?
Okay.
And so when a Black and brown girl looks at her body, it's okay to be thicker.
Yes,
it's okay to be, right? And so there's pride in that, but they were measuring them on a different scale, right?
That's interesting.
And so we know that has happened, but now there's become this whole sort of vixen IG model world where even with a natural big butt, it's not big enough.
That's
right?
true. No, it's
really.
true.
And
It's
they're
absolutely true.
experiencing that.
Yes.
They are questioning their hair. They're questioning not from the kink of their hair, but from the length of their hair.
Yeah.
Why isn't it hitting my ankles? Because nobody's hair. You know what I mean? And why don't I have the money to get that 30-inch bust down that everybody, you know what I mean? Like that Megan Thee Stallion has, right? So they're looking at their bodies differently, where things that we were embracing at one point, they're saying it's still not enough. It's still not thick enough. It's still not big enough. They're dealing with the fact that, I remember taking them to they went in the summertime with the camp. These amazing middle schoolers, they go on to the beach. A lot of times it's their first time. They're in Malibu. They're about to learn how to air quality test and tide pool. And there were a group of all white teenagers who were learning to be lifeguards. And our girls had their little T-shirts on because they have to wear their matching T-shirts every day. Just as cute as they want to be with their little braids, their protective styles, because they're going to be in the water.
Gonna be near the water.
Right? And our girls have to get in the water. They get trained in the ocean every day. They don't get trained in pools. And what was said was, those are thugs. Those kids are thugs.
Really?
And they heard that, right? And they were simply there to be scientists.
Yes.
And so here we were telling them every day, you are scientists. You are future scientists. You are operating as scientists today. And then they walk into this space with all of their equipment, and they're ready. And what they heard from other people, other students, their peers, was those are thugs.
Wow.
Right? And
how did you handle that? Because I hear you. It's so important, the positive messages that you are giving every day, right? Because you need something to counteract that narrative that you hear out in the world. And then for you to see that happen with your girls, and how did you handle that?
Yeah, so thank goodness I have an amazing staff that is very socially conscious.
Yes.
And so they jumped into action. And one staff member took the time to pull them to the side, have a conversation with them, and process those feelings. While another one went straight over to the teacher of the other group, had a conversation with them, and then said, so this is funded by the city. So go ahead and give me that information as well, and then followed up to say this is unacceptable.
I love that.
And not only is it unacceptable that the instructor never stepped in on their end to say that you were wrong until I came over here, but in addition to that, it's unacceptable that the city is funding something where everyone looks one particular way and none of them look different than that. Right?
Right. I love that showing them, modeling, advocating for yourself, right? Because also they're kids, and you don't always want to have to be the one to speak up for yourself, right? So see an adult, a caring adult, to advocate for them. It's also showing them, I don't deserve this. That's on them. That's not on me. And there's actions that I can take,
right?
That can that can improve the situation. So I love that. I mean, it's a sad story. It's sad to hear, but I also love that the girls got to see someone take up for them, in the real world, and maybe process that a little bit differently than they might have if they were by themselves, right?
Absolutely. And listen, my staff looks like them.
Yeah.
So we also got to say, look, we've experienced this too.
Yes.
You know, I have said to the girls many times, look, I have 2 degrees from one of the best colleges in the universities in the country. I've 25 years of experience, and I have CEO behind my name, and have for many, many years. Yes. And I still experience this. I still get walked into spaces where people are like, "So, are you the secretary?"
Yes, they make assumptions
right?
about you. That's right. I know.
Mr. Brown coming, right? And so, that still happens.
Yes.
And so, they understand that, and that's part of the conversations that we have. We also, a big part of what we do is we explain to them and we work with them to help them embrace the power of their voice. That is a pillar in our work.
Yes.
And so they know their voices matter. But you are saying how they have to deal with we teach them one thing, and then they go out in the world and they face another, and it happens often, right? Yes. And so we want to help prepare them for that. And help them process those things, because we're telling them you are alien superstars, right? You are amazing, right?
Yes.
And then they go out in the world and we tell them you can do any and everything, and then they then see election results that say something different.
That's right. Yes.
And so we definitely have to continue to help them process that, help them learn how to advocate for themselves, but also step aside, give them the mic, and let them speak for themselves.
Yes.
And share what they're experiencing, what their needs are, and let them advocate. Even when it comes to decision makers and things of that sort, we put them in front of those people to advocate and say, this is what I like and this is what I don't like.
That's amazing. You talked about the election results. I'm interested to hear how you all talk about politics and how the girls are processing and how they're dealing with that.
Yeah. So all of our girls have to go do a social justice STEAM project. Okay. And so they actually have to research, they work in groups and they create and research, and they decide on the social justice issue they want to focus on. And then they utilize STEAM in order to amplify or solve that issue, and they get to present it, right? And so some of the issues that they've come up with have been amazing to me, and it says a lot about the traumas that they're experiencing and what they are thinking about, right? Yes. So school shootings is a big one, right? Another big one that has been every year, that's a big topic for them. Another one is around the price of college, because our kids are college bound. Yes. 100% of our middle schoolers matriculate into high school, and 100% of our high schoolers not only graduate, but are accepted into college. So they know they're going.
Yeah, they know they're going.
And a lot of times they come in not thinking that, but by the end they know they're going,
do, yes,
right?
Yes.
So because of that, that's a concern, right? And so they're dealing with things like sexual assault. That's a big one. And so when it came to the election, entrepreneurship, another big one for them. And so when it came to the election, they were so excited to see someone who looked like them even run, right? And on a major ticket, first time. She broke barriers and got to be a first. And I think they had so much faith in that. We took a group to Washington, D.C. the week before the election on a college tour. And they got to, one of the things that they did, they went to 5 universities, but one of the things they did was they went to the White House. Okay. And they got to do a White House tour.
Oh, wow.
So they walked out saying, one of us going to be,
yes.
I said, one.
Next time I come here,
And so I said to them, an EmpowHer girl is going to be president one day. And they were like, And then they went, well, actually, no, we could do that, right? Because of who's running now, right?
Right? And
so they were like, yeah, one of us going to be president one day. And we're going to have, they went so far as to say, we're going to have the EmpowHer Gala in the main ballroom where we just went. Like had plans, right?
I love that.
And so we get back, and just a few days later is the election. And so, we were disappointed ourselves. And then we go into the space with them. And one of the things that one of the young women said, and I remember her calling me and wanted to have a conversation, and she said, you tell us every day that we can be anything and that the world is ours, but the world is telling us something different, right? How do I make sense of that?
Yes.
Right? And I had to take a moment and have no words for a moment because I was going through my own grief.
You're also trying to make sense of it, right? That's right.
And then had to have a conversation with her about it. It's tough when when a large population of our girls, the majority of our girls are brown girls. Immigration is on their mind all the time, right? And even with our Black girls, I have girls who are from Ethiopia and various countries, and immigration is on their mind. They are scared. They remember what happened before. They are scared of if their parents are going to be there, their grandparents are going to be there, their siblings are going to be able to stay in this country. They are scared about the fact that their bodies are being regulated in a way that they didn't think could ever happen. I didn't think could ever happen.
I didn't
right?
think we were still fighting that battle. Yes.
I did not know that, right? And so I grew up with my mom saying, I remember asking her about Roe versus Wade, and she said I remember back in the day, but that'll never be an issue for you. Right. And so for them to have to experience that, to hear people say things like crazy cat women just because they're single women, right? Those things say a lot to our girls, right? Because they are going to be adults one day and they're thinking about those things. And so it really did impact them, and it continues to impact them. There's a lot of fear. We know that suicidal ideation amongst Black girls has increased by 144% over the past 10 years. We know that it has increased amongst brown girls as well. And when we already know that, and then they're already dealing with depression, there's already been high levels of that. We know that there have been, I'm sorry, did I say decreased? I meant increased. We know that there are high levels of depression amongst girls in general, children in general, teens in general, males and females. But we know that it has increased over 100% amongst girls. And so when we look at that, and specifically girls of color, and so when we see that and we know that, and then they have to deal with now these high levels of fear and anxiety, that are exacerbated by the election, by a leadership that honestly, they feel attacked by. Right?
And it emboldens other people to also,
and so it's scary
aggressive.
for them. This is a scary time for them. It is a scary time for my organization. It's a scary time for me as a woman of color, but it is so scary for them. And I think that as adults, we have to take some time to step back and go, our kids are affected by this. They're asking questions about this. And, we have literally put them before decision makers, and they've talked about topics and they've talked about issues. Those projects, they present in front of decision makers. And now they're saying, I don't know if my voice matters anymore.
Yes.
Right?
Well, and it's so layered for them, especially, with what you're describing, because you have the one hand, like the elation at seeing someone who represents you. And then you have that hope for what could be. And then the response, then, that can negate all of those feelings that you had. I mean, that still happened. She did still run for, the highest office, and that is incredible. And I have all these real life fears. I wonder, a lot of what the work that you're doing is giving them that voice, right? Because they're of age, they can't vote. Probably most of the girls are, and in 12th grade, right? So most of them can't vote, and they have all these feelings, they have all these fears, and like a place to channel them, a place to feel like they're making a difference. It sounds like that's where these projects come in. Yeah. Tell me if they're able to recognize that they do have a voice and they do have an ability to change their lives with this.
They do. And so, while they are dealing with anxiety, they're dealing with those levels of depression. They also come into our classes once a week where we get to reiterate that they are powerful and their voices matter. They are also coming in and they're getting a safe space where they get to talk and speak freely about what they're experiencing. And so, absolutely, those things are things that are in their minds every day. They also continue to have that hope that things will change and that they will be the ones who will get to change them.
Yes.
And that's the thing that we always sort of, continue to push with them is that, and we want to, honestly like beat that into their brains, right? Like that you are the ones that can change this,
Yes.
right? You are the ones who will make real changes. You know, don't you worry about Elon Musk, because one day you are going to do this. You're going to do that, right? And you're going to do it from a socially conscious place, right? And so they are taking that seriously.
Yes.
And so they are working from that place. So yeah, those projects are very important because they do get to present them in front of their peers. They get to present them in front of their parents. They get to present them in front of their decision makers. But also they're learning these concepts and these topics that they get to take back to their parents and have real conversations and interpret things with their parents, right?
Really?
They get to interpret, you know, what's happening with the different measures. They get to have those conversations with their parents and say, hey, you know, this is what we've learned, and this is why it's important that you vote from this perspective, right? They have those conversations. We don't even talk to them about who is right or who is wrong, right? We don't have those conversations because we are a bipartisan organization. But what we do is we let them talk about what is important to them. We listen to them, right? And we let them bring questions to the table, and we answer those questions openly and honestly. Right?
Yes. And I think that it's so important that one can come to you and say, I'm feeling this situation, and that you can be there with them, because sometimes we just need to be able to say that, and for someone to not try to talk us out of our feelings or to say it'll be fine or don't worry. You know, you could acknowledging this is scary. I understand why you're worried about this, and maybe we're here for right now. And then you still have those other things that motivate you, that inspire you, and we have those available to us. And maybe that's going to be a little bit of time from now, and we need to sit in these feelings. And I think it's so important. It's something that I think that is not often taught to young people, how to just be okay with not being okay.
Absolutely.
You know? And I think probably for parents, they don't want their kid to not be okay, so they don't want to sit there with them. And so it's really special that they have you and your staff that they can have those feelings with when they're going through these times.
Absolutely. And speaking of parents, our parents are overworked, underpaid, and stressed out of their minds too, right? So they're trying to process and deal with those things. And they've got, most cases, most of our kids are not only children. So they have siblings that their parents are also trying to navigate. And honestly, I've had parents say, look, I love all the things that you're teaching my kid, but now I got to worry about how I'm going to pay for college. Because now she's talking about college, and I thought she was just going to do a trade school. Like, you know what I mean? And so they've got extra, stress on them. And so, and they're just trying to figure out how to make ends meet on a daily basis. You know, we have an emergency family fund. And the first year that I did this fund, I said, okay, we opened it up in December. And I thought we were going to get all these parents that were going to say, okay, I need help buying Christmas gifts for my kid.
Sure.
But they were calling and saying, I need my utilities paid. I am 3 months behind on my rent. And I just got an eviction notice. I literally had a parent call and say, we don't have sanitary napkins at home. We can't afford it. I had to decide between food and that. And so we're using paper towels. Help us. Right? And so we are able to support them from that perspective. But so imagine the traumas that they are dealing with.
That's right.
Right? And they didn't get the class. Like EmpowHer is, most of our programs are first and only of its kind in the country. So they didn't exist before us, right?
No. Well, and like you say, when you are in that cycle of poverty, nothing else matters except are my basic
survival
needs. Yes, that's it. You don't have time to think about, what would my kid like to be when they grow up? It's like, how do I feed them today?
Right.
And so until those needs are met, all the other stuff is a luxury.
Exactly.
And I think that probably with your organization, just knowing that and acknowledging that with the parents is really powerful too, because I could imagine that if you don't understand that from a basic level, that you might think, well, why aren't they more involved? How come they're not taking their kids to this and doing that with them? And the parent doesn't have to explain it to you. And I just think that that's really probably eliminates some of the challenges with the parents and with the kids. What do you think?
And the lack of judgment, right? We don't judge them.
Yes.
And so that plays a big part of it, because every parent wants to see their kids succeed. They want to see the best out of their child. They sometimes don't have the resources. They didn't get the resources. They didn't get the access to provide that for them. And so when we come in and we say, okay, your mom didn't show up to this or your dad didn't show up, there's no judgment in that
Yes.
because we understand that they're at work.
Yeah. Yeah,
right?
there's not an assumption made that they don't care about their
that they
kid
don't
because they're
care
not
about
there.
their kid, and that plays a big role in the
Yes.
trust level that we're able to develop with the parents as well as our kids. I mean, we're taking them across the country and doing things like that. And parents are like, I'm gonna sign off because we're throwing them in the ocean and having them, really like they're scuba diving 100 feet in the ocean, right?
Wow.
So we're throwing them in the Pacific Ocean and scuba diving, and parents are at the beginning they were like no, and then they're like, okay, I trust you, I'm gonna sign off because of the fact that we're not judging them, because we are supporting them as well. We are open to listening to them as well, but also we are able to, I always say, we're part of the village.
Yes.
And I always thank my parents. Thank you for allowing us to be a part of your village. That is our role. Our role is not to try to be you. Our role is not to try to be better than you. Our role is not none of that. Our role is to be a part of the village that you have created and to support you so that your child can be be her very best.
Yes.
And that's what they want, right?
Absolutely.
So it's very important, but they don't always have the time or the capacity, right? Because sometimes it's about a capacity issue of they don't have the capacity to sit down and listen to every step of how their child's day was.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, and especially if you're thinking about how am I going to take care of these kids? I have to get to work. I have to do this. There's other kids in the household, most likely, like you said. And so as much as they might want that for their child, I wonder if you also see that people are sometimes afraid to get their hopes too high for their child, right? And for the kid, that might feel like you're not supporting me. But what it is kind of self-preservation. Do you see that? Tell me.
Absolutely. Yes. I mean, we definitely, especially in the beginning. So because we work with them from the 7th through the 12th grade, you see that growth, not only in our girls, but with our parents as well.
Yes.
I always like to say our girls come in with a whisper and they end with a raw.
Oh,
right?
I love that.
And our parents, you see that difference in them as well, and that trust level that they have with us as well. And so absolutely in the beginning, when we take them on certain field trips, parents are like, you don't need to do that. That's never going to be, what I mean? Or they're like, but they let them go, or they're like, I don't know that my kid is ever going to be able to do this. Not because they can't, that's not because my kid isn't smart enough. My kid's smart enough to do all of that, but I don't know that I can afford it, right?
That's right.
And so I don't tell them that they can go to Stanford. Why are you taking them to Georgetown University?
Yes, exactly. How am I going to support them?
That, right?
Yes.
And then we have those conversations, where we say, well, we offer scholarships and also we help them get other scholarships. And where there's a will, a way. There's a way, right? And so, we're able to help our parents think bigger, which also helps, to create a space where our girls can think bigger.
Yes.
And we've had situations, I'm going to be honest, I had a young lady who just a few years ago who got her, who graduated, and I remember her telling the story. So when they graduate and they come to their scholarship ceremony, they get to tell their story. Each child tells us their story. So they give a speech before they get their scholarship. And she told a story that broke my heart. She said that in the middle school, she was required to be in the program, right? Because that was how her school was set up. Every school is set up different. And then in high school, it was an elective, so it was a choice that she got to make. And she decided to do the program. And that meant that she couldn't take care of her younger sibling on Saturdays while her dad worked. And her dad was very upset with her about that. And so he didn't speak to her for multiple years in the same household because he didn't like that she had goals to do something bigger and she wanted to do our program. And then she got into college. And so she's in college now, but she got into college and he was angry because she decided to go because he wanted her to help take care of her siblings.
Yes.
And initially she wasn't going to have the money, but we helped her with her package. And then we gave her a scholarship that balanced out what she needed.
Yes.
And so she's in college. She's actually a junior this year. No, she's a senior this year in college. And she's just starting to rebuild a relationship with her dad because for so long, for many years, almost 8 years, he was very angry with her.
In the same house and not speaking to her. I mean, I have to imagine what bravery, for that child to still make a decision that felt like it was right for her.
Right.
Even in the face of having so many challenges from family, because I'm sure she didn't want to disappoint her dad.
Absolutely.
And knew that the sibling needed to be cared for, and she wanted something different for her life.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's incredible to make that choice, to go ahead and do that, and to have a parent who's unhappy with you, and probably for a child too, to not really understand that, because I'm sure he probably has his own trauma and his own issues and expectations and that kind of thing. But it's incredible that she was able to do that in the face of so much, so much trouble with her family.
Yeah, but she built the confidence to do that through the program. We have many times where our girls get into. I had a young lady. I was just telling the story the other day. I had 2 young ladies who got into Stanford University. One, her parents said, "You cannot go.
Really?
You have to stay local here in LA to help us with the store. You cannot go. We're just not comfortable with you going that far." I was like, she's still in the same state. She's not going that far. Like, Stanford is not that far from LA, right? But for them, that meant she was going to leave the household. And that scared them because they were holding on to her so tight, right? And I have another young lady who got in and was worried that she wasn't going to be able to afford it. And so she went to a state school instead. And she's thriving. She's thriving there. Both of them are in college. They're both doing really well. But they had the opportunity to go to an Ivy League school that actually now they can go for free, right? At that time, they weren't able to, but we would have helped them. But their parents, and one child got a full ride. Like, the one whose parents said no, she got a full ride. But her parents said, we're not comfortable with letting her go. We had other girls who were in college and went far away, like to other states, New York, Syracuse, come back and talk to the parents, call and talk to the parents. We did. One of my girls who is she's in school in Syracuse. Her mom didn't want her to go. Her mom did not want her to go that far, but she made a decision to do it. And she was like, I'm doing this with or without your support. And mom came aboard, right? And supported her on that. But she picked up the phone. We talked to her and told her what was going on. She picked up the phone, called those parents and spoke to them in Spanish and said, let me talk to you about, and I understand from a cultural standpoint that you don't want to, that our parents don't like to let us go, but you got to let her go. Right. And so we have those situations where sometimes the girls got to step in and they make the calls for us. Right. Because amazing. And now also I have conversations with parents all the time about the fact that we have to break the cycle when it comes to generational trauma. And what you don't understand is that you are allowing your own trauma that has been passed down to stop you from supporting your child. But what you're also doing in that is you're passing on that trauma to them.
That's right.
And so you're just continuing the cycle. And so we have those conversations. When it comes to scuba diving, do you know how many parents are like, absolutely not. I don't want them on a boat. Like, we took them on a boat to go to Catalina Island, and there were parents that were like, I don't really want my child on a boat, right? And I was like, oh, no. You signed her up for this program. This is part of the program, and let's talk about that. And I was like, I get it. Like, that big boat ride, that first one was not
It was not good. It didn't serve us well.
None of us, right? We don't,
No.
When do we break the cycle?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And I had to have a conversation with one mom where I said to her, less than 1% of marine biologists are Black women. Less than 3% are Black in general. Those jobs start at $150K. Why would you take that away from her?
Yes.
At 12 years old, she can learn how to scuba dive and get her certification and how to sail and get her certification.
That is incredible.
Why would you take that away from her?
Yes.
Right? And so I had to have like real deep challenge parents, right? And they're getting it. And I've literally had parents bawl tears, okay? Because they got it. They were feeling like they had the aha moments of like, I am passing on trauma to my kid.
Yes.
Right?
And I think that we usually don't name it that. You can just say, parents say, just because I said so. That's why you can't do it.
That's what they say.
And that doesn't, then you have a child who's now resentful because they had this incredible opportunity and someone stood in their way. And even if they stay home, you have to imagine that they are changed now. They feel differently about their parents or their sibling or whatever it is that made them stay in that place. And so I think that the way that you're able to talk to parents, which is coming from a place of, I know you want the best for your child, or I know you're making the decision, because maybe it's just scary to have your child who's been in your house all this time move away from home. And so let's start there with acknowledging that. And look what they could do. Look what they could do with this opportunity. Look how they light up when when they're studying this or when they're learning this new thing. And I think that probably makes it easier for the parents to recognize when they're projecting their own issues and
Absolutely.
when they're really just trying to have the best thing for their child, right?
Absolutely. And look at how not only are we breaking the cycle from trauma, but also she has the potential to break the economic cycle in
Yes,
your
yes,
household. Right?
absolutely.
She has that opportunity to do that. So also being able to say, this is what this can look like in the future for her.
Yeah.
Right? And that helps them to get like why it's so important. And when I literally say to them, all of our programs are free. So for her to do that program just to get her just scuba dive, nothing else, right? It's going to cost $1,000,
Yes.
right? And then the whole program is multiple thousands of dollars that we are giving her for free. Do you have that money to pay later? Because when they say, well, when she gets older, she can do it. Do you have it to make that happen later? Like, how's that going to happen, right? And so that allows them to step back and say, okay, the other part of it is to say, I tell the parents all the time, these are my babies too. I'm not gonna let anything happen to them.
Yes.
These are my babies too. We invest a lot into making sure that there are boats out there watching them. There are, you know what I mean? Like there's so many levels of cautionary efforts that we take to make sure that they are going to be safe and protected.
Yes.
We're not gonna let anything happen to them. Because we love your kids. We love them like they are ours.
Yes.
So that's the other part of that, is that once they embrace us as part of the village, it's a world of difference, right?
Yes.
For them and for their children. And there are some dysfunctional households where there's abuse and other things of that sort, and that there are bigger things that are happening that we have to have conversations with mom from that perspective too.
Yeah. What is your role in those kinds of situations? What do you do when you know that there are additional challenges in the household?
So we do offer case management. So we will intervene. We'll do an intervention. We'll have those conversations. We'll find out if there are. We'll make sure that they have access to resources, to therapy. We work with the school counselor to find out what the school counselor already knows and what has already been put into place.
Yes.
A lot of times they already are within the system, so we'll work with the system to find out what's going on, and again, make sure that we're not stepping on anyone's toes.
Yes.
So, how can we be a support around this? And again, it's all about not judging the space, but really coming in to say, again, our goal is to make sure your kid is safe.
Yes.
And and then two, we want to make sure you're safe. And so that's sort of how we step in. We've had parents who had a parent just last year who was unhoused, and she was going to lose her kids because she was unhoused. And she called us and she was like, I need help. And so we made sure that we followed her her case manager followed her from the moment that we put her into a hotel with the kids, and they stayed in the hotel for multiple weeks, and we paid for that, to being able to get them into a shelter and a program that then got them into their own apartment.
Yes.
And so we stepped with them every step of the way and helped mom get a job. We were with them every step of the way. Now they're thriving. The kids are thriving. Mom has her own apartment again. It was a DV situation that she was leaving.
Okay.
And so she left, grabbed her kids, left, and then realized she had no place to go, right? And so, they're thriving. Mom is employed again. Like, they're safe. But there are other organizations that I know of that would have just called, right, and filed a report.
That's right.
That's not helping anybody, right, to split up more families.
Additional problems.
And create more trauma, right?
Absolutely.
That's not helping. So we try to step in first. Of course, we have to assess, is this something that we do have to, the trauma is too major. But when we can step in and avoid that, we're going to. That is always the first line of defense for us.
Yes. Yeah, and I feel like then you're able to really care for the whole family. It sounds like on its face, okay, this is to help these young girls, but it's so much more than that, what you're doing. You're really looking at what does everyone in this household need for this child to thrive, and how can we meet that need? And I don't know if that's something that's evolved because I think probably every day you probably find out about something new that you need to consider and to think about for the families.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, our priority is the girl, but it's what does she need? And that may be family intervention.
Yes.
Right? what does she need? It may be a roof over her head,
Yes.
right? Or utilities. And that means supporting the family so that
Yes.
she can get what she needs.
Yes.
So we look at it from that perspective. What's really cool is because the girls love the program, because the parents are trusting us, we're now seeing where most of our girls are first generational college students. Now we got this group of girls that are second generation. Why? Because they're the younger siblings of the girls who just graduated from
Yes,
college.
and they see someone can do it, right?
Right.
I love that you said that, Dawn, because I think we don't always think about it that way. We think about you're the first one in your family to go, but not necessarily the impact that then has on your community, your siblings, right? Your other family members, that they see someone they know who grew up where they did and probably in a similar situation, that they're going and they're
Absolutely.
succeeding. Yeah, I love that. That's really,
Yeah.
I think that it's just one of those, the impacts just like snowball, from you taking care of the family, having their needs met, because, I feel like, and you probably have seen this, if you're not addressing those things, then the girls probably disappear from the program and you don't see them anymore. If the family has to leave because they don't have a place to stay, no matter what that girl's potential was, she's now in a survival situation and not thinking about going to Malibu and doing all of that stuff, right?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And look, I mean, if things aren't stable in the household, what we're teaching isn't going to stick.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just the truth of the matter, because we see them once a week, right, for an hour or 2 hours. And then certain kids, because they're in so many of our programs, we see them a few more hours a week. But on average, we see them once to twice a week, depending on the child. Their parents are seeing them 7 days a week.
Yes, that's
right.
right. Yep.
So they're getting. We have to make sure that what's happening in the household is reinforcing what we are teaching them and supporting, and not countering that.
Yes.
Right. And so that's important. That's part of their development. And we want to make sure that their younger siblings can come into our program. Their cousins can come. And they do it. They bring. We got full families in our program.
Really,
now,
I love
right?
that.
And so we want to make sure that can happen.
Yes.
And again, that goes back to making sure that the space, that the household has what it needs and is safe, so that our girls can thrive, and the next generation after that, and the next generation after that.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, you're doing so much with your organization. Where do you still see gaps in care? Like what needs to be done?
Yeah. Listen, there are always going to be gaps.
Always.
We don't have like a on-staff clinician. We work with interns, right? So, there's always that, making sure that someone's available to support them, and in the summer, and what that looks like around care. But also, we are a small nonprofit, so we have financial limitations on what we can do when it comes to what the parents are experiencing.
Yes.
We do one-time, emergency situations, but listen, I've got parents who every month is struggling to make their, to pay their rent.
Yes.
So I know that when I get the bill from them and it says they paid, let's say that the rent was $1,200 and they paid $900 every month, and it just you know what I mean? And then the rest is, and I pay it off. I know that sometimes that's going to happen again, right?
Yes, that's right.
But this is what the restrictions of the grant that I have that pays that off will allow, right? Like I know that. And we can't, we can't pay your bills all the time, right? Like we know those things. And so those gaps are going to exist. We know that health gaps, we are not, we don't do like physical health things without, but we know that those are major gaps. Like the healthcare is a huge one.
Well, and that is exacerbated when there's poverty as well, right? Because not only do things go unchecked, even if you find out, okay, this is what I need and this is how much the medication costs, doesn't matter because I can't pay it, right?
Exactly.
And so that is, it all is just kind of layered on top of each other. Yes.
And there are educational gaps. I mean, let's just get real that our kids are in public schools, Title I schools, and sometimes, often, to be honest, and we love our school partners, but often, I want to say this delicately, the education that they're learning is not competitive to the education of the child who's in a private school in Beverly Hills, right? And so when they go into college, they get accepted to these amazing schools, and then there are academic gaps that they discover exist for them, right?
Yeah.
And so then there are needs to support them around catching up. Or they walk in. I had a young lady who said, academically, I was able to do everything. Like I was in there, I was doing it. She's studying aeronautical engineering, which is amazing, right?
That's amazing.
And she was with us from 7th through 12th grade. And she's a junior now in college, stays in touch with us. And so, and still does some of our programs, but she is studying aeronautical engineering. And she said her freshman year, she walked in and not only was she the only Black girl in the program, right? And then on top of that, this kid was like, yeah, I got my pilot's license when I was 16. And then the other kid was like, yes, my parents paid for the whole school for the whole 4 years up front. And then the other kid was like, yes, and not only do I have my pilot's license, but I have traveled to these number of countries and have studied there. And you know what I mean?
Yes.
And she's sitting there like, oh, okay. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
what can I say now?
Right,
Yes.
And so she was like, geez, I felt like I was behind the 8 ball, even with all of the stuff that EmpowHer gave me, all of the things that I got. And I came in confident and then walked in there and was like, everybody has their pilot's license for me, you know? And so then I said, so then go get your pilot's license. She was like, well, I can't, that is really expensive. Okay, so let's figure out how to work together to make it happen, you know? But she walked in there thinking, I'm in this. I am able to compete, only to find out that they came with a level of privilege that she couldn't even begin.
Right.
And at the end of the day, we are a nonprofit.
Yes.
Like, you know what I mean? So, right. And so they came in with a level of privilege that she couldn't even begin to think about, like imagine, right?
Yes, and I also feel that probably if she didn't have this foundation with EmpowHer, that would have been enough to derail her, maybe.
Right, and it didn't. She's a junior and still in there.
Amazing. That's incredible.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because I think that we often think, okay, you got to pay for college, and there's so many other things. So many other financial things. You pay for school. What about books? Books are a fortune, right? All these other little things. And then that, which she can't go back in time and she's not going to have had those experiences that the kids have, but you're giving her the ability to move forward with the new experiences. Okay, this is actually, that would help me with my career too. How do I get that now? Versus, I mean, I think it's easy for us to say, like, I didn't get that, I can't compete. And that's the end of the story.
Absolutely. And so many times we get those calls when they go to college and they're like, okay, Dawn, I'm dealing with this, or, you know, I'm experiencing this. One young lady, she texted me because she's getting challenged with, she needs to get into a certain program within the university that they're saying, well, no, you should have came in freshman as a freshman and got in, and now you are a sophomore, so we don't accept you. And she's like, but the resources that they have, right? And so I said, so then go in there and advocate for yourself, right? And and sometimes she calls me and she's like, I just need a pep talk. And I'm like, you are an EmpowHer girl. Like, don't you forget that. Once an EmpowHer girl, always an EmpowHer girl. You do not give up. That's not how this works, right? We know what's going to happen in the end. You win, right? And so, you know, they have that social emotional learning, right? They start with that like they get that throughout our program. That is the foundation. And that every year they're getting that the entire school year. And so they're getting that social emotional learning, which is building their confidence so that they know how to navigate that space. They know how to give their own selves a pep talk. They know how to say to themselves, okay, I might not have had this, but I have this. I'm resourceful. I know how to advocate for myself. I know how to, you know, I've had kids who come and said, my advisor told me I needed to find another, we had someone who called us and said, I met with my advisor finally as a freshman. She was a STEM girl because most of our girls are STEM girls. And she said, he told me that I should find another major because that one was probably too hard and that most kids that aren't successful. And she was like, and I knew what he was really saying. I know he was saying that most Latin girls aren't successful, right? Most Black girls aren't successful. Like, she was like, I know that's what he was really saying. I know he was saying that most girls aren't successful because it was a STEM career that we don't go into, right? And I said, so what is your response? And she was like, I don't know. If my advisor doesn't have faith in me, how am I going to be successful? I said, is that the only advisor in the entire department? She's like, well, no. So ask for another advisor. You're an EmpowHer girl. You know how to advocate for yourself. Use your voice. And so she did. And she was able to get another advisor. She went into that advisor and said, don't tell me what I can't do. I need you to support me through what I can.
I love that.
Right? And again, she's a junior now, right?
Yeah.
Still studying, marine biology, still doing her thing, right? But actually, I'm change it to molecular biology and craziness.
Try to find something even harder.
Right, she'll pick something harder. I'm like, girl. But she, but it's because of the fact that we, one, are always there. They can always call us, but also because they have that foundation, they know that, no, wait, I was told I could do this. No, wait, I believe I can do that. I wasn't just told, I believe it. No, wait, I can do this, right? And they know how to, one of the things that's part of their class is how to navigate systems. So we don't lie about that. We don't lie about the fact that you're going to deal with people who are going to tell you can't. You're going to deal with people who don't want to hear your voice. You're going to deal with people who are going to look at you and say that you're aggressive and you're this and you're that from the moment you walk in, that you're too much, right? And I tell them, I've dealt with all of that. You're going to deal with it. And you're still going to have to figure out how to navigate that and continue to do what you do. You don't give up.
Yes. I wonder what kind of advice you have for parents or for young people who don't have access to, all the great work that you do. What can people do to kind of advocate for themselves to take back some of that power? What would you tell people?
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. One of the things I like to always say is that you playing small does not serve the world. Your voice matters. We want to hear it, and it deserves to be heard. And so I think the first step is to utilize your voice and then find out what services and programs do exist. Find your tribe. Find your mentor first, and then create a tribe around that. Who are the like-minded people who are going to have your back through this? So, those would be the three things that I would say is, one, embrace the power of your voice. Don't stop using it, even when people tell you to be quiet. Two, find a mentor. And don't be afraid to find more than one. And then three, find your tribe, right? Find your community and allow them to wrap their arms around you and make sure that you are also serving that community.
Yes. I love that. That's amazing. Thank you. Dawn, if people want to find out more about the work that you're doing, where can they find you?
Yeah. So EmpowHer Institute, which is EmpowHer. And you can go to empowher.org to find our website. We are on IG as well as Facebook. And LinkedIn under EmpowHer Institute, and EmpowHer.org LA for Instagram. And then if you want to find me, it's Dawn L. Brown, and you can find me on IG as well as on LinkedIn.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here and for sharing all this incredible work that you're doing and how people can apply it to their lives as well. It's really valuable information. Thank you.
Thank you.
For more information on me, you can find me at drpatricelegoy.com and also on social media at Therapy with Dr. Patrice. Thank you for listening. I'll see you next episode.